Live from the Business Radio X studio inside Relevantz Bank, the bank that specializes in understanding you. It's time for North Fulton Business Radio.
And hello again, everyone. Welcome to another edition of North Fulton Business Radio. I'm John Ray. And folks, we are broadcasting as usual from inside Relevantz Bank in beautiful Alpharetta. And if you are tired of the mega bank experience, and if you're at one of those banks, you know what I'm talking about. Not a lot of personal connection. Let's just put it like that. Here's what I hear from clients that I refer to Relevantz. They tell me that Relevantz is big enough to handle pretty much any need you can throw at them, but they're small enough to do it in a personal way. They actually answer the phones manually at this branch. That's a no at the big banks, but that's the way Relevantz does it. And I think that's the way most people like it. Most customers like it. So if that's something that appeals to you, go to renaissancebank.com and find one of their local offices and give them a call. Relevantz Bank, understanding you, member FDIC. And now I want to welcome a longtime friend of our show. Tino Mantella is with us, and Tino is president managing partner of Retained, and because he's not busy enough, he's also the chief strategy officer of Relevantz. Tino, welcome back.
Hey, thanks. It's always good to be here, John.
It's great to be with you always. You're the busiest man I know, I think.
It's fun. I don't know what I would do with myself if I didn't have 3 jobs.
Let's talk about those jobs that you're in. How you serving folks out there these days?
It's interesting because when I left the TurkNet Leadership Group, although you never leave TurkNet Leadership Group, I'm still a bit of an owner there and support the team. But I wanted to do something else, and I had a few opportunities, and so I convinced everyone in the leadership of both companies that I could do both, and they basically accepted that. That's what I'm doing. And then again, when you say, how am I serving? I always like to be part of nonprofits, so I'm on the Tech Alpharetta board and the North Fulton Chamber board and Families First board and a few other things to support people and communities.
That's outstanding. We may get to some of that, but we want to talk about what you're up to at Retained and Relevantz. For those that don't know these companies, let's talk about what they do. Maybe you want to talk about Relevantz first?
Yeah, let's talk about Relevantz just briefly. So Relevantz is an exceptional custom software development company. They have about 1,200 employees. A lot of them are engineers. We're headquartered right in Alpharetta. Mm-hmm. Both companies are headquartered in Alpharetta, which is great. But they have about 1,000 people in India as well. They have about 1,200 employees in total. And they have a great reputation of stickiness. Once they get in with a company, the average now is over 8 years. And you're talking about companies like Fiserv and Global Payments and Yeti and SiteOne and a number of others. I'm helping them think through how to build a brand, opening up new doors in the business development side, and just in general thinking about strategy. How do you retain customers, which they're really good at, but how do you bring on new customers, new logos, and then really help them through statements of work, building the business around anything from, of course, AI is a hot topic, but how do you structure data? How do you optimize that? Machine learning. They cut their teeth on application development. So anything in that space. And one of the things to think about is they're a really good company. How we want more people to know about them.
When you talk about using the word custom and building a brand, that strikes me as a difficult thing, right? And maybe I'm wrong, but you're trying to fulfill the bespoke needs of a particular client.
Right.
And yet a brand is something that is meant to apply in a lot of different circumstances and ways. How do you reconcile that contradiction?
I think there's a point that they're unified, if you will, because what happens with companies is, and I like the way you asked the question, because what Relevantz is, they don't have a product off the shelf. Nothing wrong with products off the shelf. A lot of people need that, and we will recommend that as well if there's a tool out there that people can use. Mm-hmm. But they really sit down with you and they go through this predetermination or pre-involvement in terms of really thinking through what the need is. And then they take another step and they really help the company to analyze what that need is until they even get into the finding a solution. We're not a staffing firm. We have our own people, and the engineers will help you think through, but we don't want to typically have a situation where it's, okay, run with the ball, we're not going to be around. It's really a partnership with the company. And then on the brand side, it's like, how do we create communication like Business Radio X? Mm-hmm. We have our own podcasts that we're doing now and a newsletter. And how do we get the word out in social media that this is what we do? Mm-hmm. We're good at what we do. There's a lot of, as I said, stickiness there that we land and expand. So even if we take on a small project at first, it can turn into, over time, relationship. So on the brand side, I have to say, first of all, have you ever heard of Relevantz? And we are relevant, which is how they picked up the name.
Sure.
And then once you're thinking about that, then it's, do you know what we do? There's a lot of big players out there. And I think you use a term even for the bank when we were talking before, is we're large enough to serve you and small enough to know you. So it really is this relationship that we want to have over the long haul. And even if there is a statement of work, we go beyond that because we want to make sure that they actually solve their issue or they create their opportunities. That's what we do. And my job is really help people think through, particularly around the U.S., what the opportunities to use Relevantz as a company.
You mentioned several names that are longtime clients of Relevantz, some fintech names, a variety of names in terms of large and small companies. Yes. What are the best fit clients for Relevantz?
Yeah, mid-cap to enterprise size, so those large companies would be a target market for us because our engineering team enjoys solving big problems, and that's our unique space. Mm-hmm. But the mid-cap works well as well. If it's a small company, we might be able to help them, or we might be able to refer somebody that can be a partner with us. But we do look at the Atlanta Business Chronicle locally and others and say, okay, what are those companies that we should be in? And then where do we need to be? And you know my background, I guess some people say there's never been a networking event that I didn't go to or didn't like. And you've been to a lot of them too, John. And when people call me too, then this is totally off topic, but ties into retain. I've been heads down with my job for 20 years, and I never went to a networking event. Now I want another job or need another job. What do I do? Then I'll give them advice in terms of whether it's TAG or Atlanta Technology Professionals or TechBridge, all those things that you and I have been to and know.
Sure.
And how to get involved and engaged in that. But also with, at least locally, it's where do we need to participate? Where do we need to sponsor, that kind of thing, so we get our name out there.
Yeah, for sure. So I guess the CIO is maybe one of the decision makers that would want to reach out and be in touch with Relevantz. If I'm a CIO, for example, how do I know I need to pick up the phone and get in touch with you and talk about the services that Relevantz offers? Yeah,
I love that. All CIOs call, but CIOs and CTOs, sometimes CISOs as well. If it's a mid-cap company, maybe the CEO will pick up the phone, or the CFO. Mm-hmm. It's if they're looking at a growth opportunity with the company, if they're looking at a challenge. We have a couple companies now that have data amassed for, you'll appreciate this in your business, but for 10 years. I'm talking to one company now, and it's, we're not sure how to optimize that data, to use it, how to structure it in a way to have an impact. We're working with another company on Salesforce, and they want to use Salesforce, so it's not like we're going to give them Salesforce, but how do they, again, use the word optimize, but how do they be effective in terms of looking in this group? They have businesses that should work together, but they don't necessarily work together. So how can the tool help them? So what we'll help them do is build around that tool, in this case, to make sure that they're being efficient and effective and maximizing what they can possibly do on that. Anybody that's in that space could be a high-level engineer, VP of technology, or whatever that has those challenges or opportunities to give us a shot. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And sometimes the big companies will go to the Accentures or the IBM, the Tatas of the world, and that's fine. But we have a space there. A lot of times we'll compete against them and win because they like the personal touch and they like to know who they're working with and they like our track records. No job too small or big for us. Sounds like a commercial.
Yeah, well, that's okay. We're here to hear it. It sounds like you're working on projects that are really beyond the resource scope, and I don't mean just money, time more than money.
Yeah,
that big companies have to be able to attack. They're working on the day-to-day tactical concerns of what their software needs are, and it's hard to go after that big project that everybody knows needs to be done that is going to require a lot of time, a lot of effort, and a lot of focus.
That's well said. And I would add to that sometimes they may not have the people or want to bring on the people mm-hmm. to create that opportunity to solve something mm-hmm. or to build something. And companies now that should be frugal and should be tight with their budgets and look to say, look, we've got a couple people that are good here. Either they don't have the time or they don't have the resource. So will you partner with us to help us solve this, problem?
Yeah.
That's where we're best, really thinking through what the issue is, identifying it with the company, and then helping them to solve their problem. And then we may be an MSP, service provider, to manage their service. We could do that, but also they could run with it, and we'll do the next project with them.
Mm. Tino Mantella is with us. He is the Chief Strategy Officer of Relevantz, and he's also the President Managing Partner of Retained. So maybe we ought to shift gears and talk a little bit about
Sounds good.
Retained. Executive search.
Yes.
Let's get into the details of what that's all about.
Okay. And I think, John, probably most people know executive search or know of executive search. This is where a company, potential client, wants to use an outside firm to find someone, their best person they could possibly find to fill a role. And so I was contacted, a little bit of an owner in this company too, but with Betsy Robinson, who's the founder of Betsy. A lot of people know Betsy in the community, great lady, founder of Tier 4 Group. Mm-hmm. And Tier 4 Group just celebrated their 10th year of service. They are I would say, a technology staffing firm. They'll place your engineers and your people that need Java and C++ and anything related to the technology space. And they have placed on occasion C-suite, CIOs and CTOs. But Betsy and I were talking, and she wanted me to come in and help her to build that higher level of leadership search. What we would do is, and what we do is, we look for opportunities to fill roles at that C-suite level. And we talk about it in a number of different ways. One, it would be CIOs, CTOs, or VPs of technology. In a tech company, we'd love to fill anybody in the C-suite. And then we also could do fractional if people want to have someone they're not ready to maybe take on a full-time, maybe part-time, we can do that. And then because of my background in nonprofits of number of decades, I also am well positioned to do search in the nonprofit world. So think CEOs, heads of fundraising, CFOs, anybody in that C-suite. But we're young and hungry. If somebody called me tomorrow and has a role that's for something else and they have a need, we'd be a great fit to help them. I think our distinct advantages are a number. We're diversity certified. So we're one of a few organizations that actually have an LGBTQ certification. About 40% of the people we hire are women. So we really look to find people of color, women, all kinds of diversity certification. We're good at that. So a lot of companies now want to do that, or they have that requirement. And I want to say, hopefully they do more than talk a good game, but they actually want to do that. So we're really good at that. Secondly, I have a great team at Tier 4 Group that I'm leveraging right now, is in the early stages. We have about 20 team members that can help recruit. They do sourcing. So we're really strong. It's not just me.
Yeah.
Third, my own background in terms of running TAG for 12 years. I got to know just about every CIO in the state. And then running the TurkNet Leadership Group, I got to know pretty much every chief human resource officer and the CHRO in the state. So so if somebody needs a strong person, I have my own Rolodex. I shouldn't say Rolodex anymore, but you know what I mean. John and I know
electronic
what it is.
Yeah. I know what it is.
I used to have those Rolodexes with 1,000 cards in there. And it's like, how do you define John Doe? It's okay. So anyways, that's another advantage of us. And then we use AI. We have a really good system, CRM system, that can pull up names. You plug in the data that you need. So those are just a few things that we have as an advantage. My challenge, John, basically, frankly, for the audience is we need to get in a position where we have a shot to do the search. For every 50 calls I get from my friends that are CIOs and CHROs that they're looking for their next job, I get one or two that are saying, can you do the search? So I need to get that balance going. I'll take anybody that's looking or even thinking about it in the future and put it in my database, because that's going to build the database when I have opportunities to do the search. But making that transition to do the search, to be some client picks up the phone, and it might be a CEO or CFO. It may not be the CIO, John, because if you think about it, if they're in the position, unless they're leaving and want to make a recommendation, they wouldn't be the ones that would be picking up the phone. So it would be somebody else saying, hey, we lost our CIO. We need a new CIO. Your names come up, as an example. So that's where I'm at with that company, and appreciate being on here to let people know.
Yeah, absolutely. It strikes me as I listen to you and think about your expertise and experience that you obviously have a lot of experience in a lot of different roles, but your time at TurkNet, where you spent so much time in leadership development and applying good leadership principles, you're bringing that to executive search. That's got to be an advantage for you in terms of how you can help a client.
Yeah, we at TurkNet, we were helping coaching maybe 300 people a year at that C-suite level.
Sure.
I got to see every opportunity they had, every challenge that they had, and it helps me to see when I'm doing a search. And I'm personally, another, I think, advantage is it's not going to go down 3 rungs to who's actually going to do the search. If you're looking at one of the big firms, it's going to be me. And so my experience in that leadership company, like you said, is I have a good handle on it. And my experience in the nonprofit world, and also at TAG, where I got to really see the effective CIOs and CTOs in the nonprofit world. I'll tell you an interesting story, if we have time here, just real quick.
Yeah, sure.
Is be fully transparent. I had a potential search for a nonprofit fundraising leader, which would be called, for those that don't know, a chief development officer or head of fundraising or whatever. And the local organization, the questions that they asked made it challenging for me, because they said, how many searches have you done, and how many searches have you done in our space? And my response was, I've hired at least a dozen chief development officers. I know exactly the profile that you need. And those chief development officers and my teams have raised over $300 million in fundraising. That evidently didn't resonate because I didn't get it, because they looked at it in a very, I'll call it, say, parochial way, or a way that said you haven't done the searches the way that normal groups have done the searches. But that's not the advantage that I bring. It's like I hired a dozen people that are crackerjack heads of fundraising that have helped me raise $300 million in the YMCAs, in TAG in a different way, at the Arthritis Foundation, places that I've been the CEO. Mm-hmm. So I'm going to keep that. Maybe I need to modify that a little bit, but that's, as you say, all those things are one of my advantages that I have a good sense of. When we get into a search, I'm not going to bring the client somebody that can't do the job. I'm going to bring them the very best. I need to get those opportunities to do that. So that's the rub right now.
What are some of the unique considerations, issues, or is a better word, that tech companies have right now when it comes to filling C-suite roles?
Yeah, so we'll start with the CIO, CTOs. Gone are the days where we used to laugh at TAG, and it's a joke, you've probably heard it before, but used to slide the pizza under the door of this tech group, and you had no idea what they were doing, but you knew something good was going on.
Yeah.
Now they really have to be communicators, and they did in those times too. But now they may be sitting with the CEO. They're part of that group. Maybe they have a responsibility for security, and they're going to have to go before the board and talk about, are we protected? Are we going to get hacked?
Or the press, if they've been hacked.
Or the press. They have to answer to the press.
Right.
They may have to do that.
Yeah.
So their sophistication as communicators is really important. And then in addition to that, it's what does the company need? And this is where maybe even my Relevantz experience comes in and my TAG experience. But what is the company really looking for in terms of a CIO? Are they more trying to maintain the status quo? They're not on the bleeding edge or the cutting edge. They may be talking about AI, but they're not going to be utilizing AI. Mm-hmm. Are they going to have to migrate? We're talking a couple companies now that want to migrate their data center from, let's say 40 around the U.S. to 3. And how do they get to that? And does the CIO have any experience related to that? So it's really understanding what the company needs, and then going out using our AI, my own personal contacts, and any other resources we can muster to say, okay, here's 3 to 5 people that we think would be really good for the role. That's just the CIO. But for each of those areas, companies are changing, needs are changing. And so really to identify what those needs are. In the nonprofit, some of them are fighting for their lives right now in terms of companies that are tightening their belts, so maybe they're not getting the funding that they used to. Mm-hmm. Do they have opportunities to generate revenue outside of financial development? Can there be a fee-for-service revenue like we did at the Y or even at other organizations that I've run? So it's identifying those needs and then finding people that either have done that, hopefully, or they have that capability to do that. And yeah, we have we have a great database already of good people.
And you bring a lot of strategic wisdom, I would think, to your clients. Maybe, if I can say so, what they are looking for versus your advice on what they really need to be looking for.
I like that you said that, and I think that is the case. And because one of some of our marketing retained is we're a CEO going to hire a C-suite. It's not you're coming in from other disciplines, which is fine, but having that. My favorite thing in life and business is strategy, to be able to help them think through, not to change their mind about something necessarily, but to broaden their thinking around what maybe they need. And also what happens is people are looking for somebody that has red, yellow, green. And maybe my opportunity is to say, have you thought about blue in terms of that being something that they can really contribute? Because the profiles that we get, even in the early searches that I'm doing, are pretty structured. You get the job description and all. And so they may say, we need a person with 10 years experience in X. And I may say, this person only has 7 years, but look at the sophisticated things they've done. I think most good people in search would do that. And I've done search for my career. It's just for my own companies and not for, and then I was the first recipient of the Connector Award at ATP, named after Dan Weber, which was a real honor because I think you knew Dan. I knew Dan and knew he was a connector. But so I've been able to connect a lot of people for jobs, for marriages. That's a whole different story. But I go back to my high school reunion and it's 3 people. I'm like, I introduced you 2 guys.
Yeah.
But so I won the Connector Award and now I can actually get paid for helping people connect. So
there you go. There you go. Yeah. And I would think, just to be specific about this issue of, hey, what you ought to be looking for is to broaden the perspective of your clients, to be looking for folks that maybe are not in the space currently, but have talents that can be applied to whatever slice of the technology world that they are in. Because when I think cross-disciplinary, I think of you because you've had so much experience across a wide variety of organizations.
Yeah, thanks. I think that's correct also, and a good observation on your part that I do have those cross disciplines. And the other factor is, are they too young? Are they too old? I just did a little of my weekly LinkedIn video on age. And one of the points I made, which is a little bit relevant here, not too much, is what does a teenager and an 85-year-old have in common? Do you know?
No.
They both want their car keys.
I like that.
Yeah. And I think that now if there's a 60-year-old going for a job, just say that, and they're gray like us a little bit, and somebody might look at them and say, they're probably not the best candidate. And then you have to look at what they've done, and also remind them that if you live pretty good life at 65 now, the statistic says you're in the U.S., you're going to live to 85. So I like to say the person has a lot of gas left in the tank, and don't rule them out. Or I my own experience when I got the job at the Chicago YMCA, I may have told the story to you before, but I wanted to get a job in the Y, one of the largest Ys in the country, before I turned 40, and I was 39. And Chicago Y and New York are the 2 largest Ys in the country. And I said, I'm going to go for that. And you want to surround yourself with people that say, yeah, go for it. But there was a few people that said, I don't think you're even going to have a chance at that because you haven't jumped through all the flaming hoops of fire to get there. You haven't been the VP, the executive VP, the president of a smaller organization than that. But ended up winning that role. And I say winning it because I did things like I went to Chicago like a week early and I talked to the United Way and stakeholders and all. And that helped me to, when I got to the first interview, I blew them away because being from outside Chicago, by the way, they never hired anybody in their 100-year history outside of Chicago, that I sold them on the job. So my only point with that is that we have to look at all of the factors and maybe open their perspective a little bit more, that somebody can do the job that doesn't quite meet all the criteria. But I wouldn't mind saying, I think this is your best candidate based on my experience. Yeah. And they take it or leave it. But we try to be, I think part of the job of somebody leading search is to be candid and helpful and strategic thinking and based on our experiences, that kind of thing.
Yeah, good work. You mentioned tech, you mentioned nonprofit, you mentioned an openness into other sectors. Any particular size companies are good fits for you?
Really, companies of any size, in this case, would be good fit. You have some of these young companies. One of the things I'm doing is I'm beginning to communicate with PE firms and VC firms. Maybe they're looking to expand their team, or now they have made majority ownership and they're looking for new leadership, that we can do those searches. I think the biggest of the big companies, if you look at the Coca-Colas of the world, I'd love for them to call me and say, can you find my next CIO? But that might not be that's not necessarily the target. I think more of the mid-cap, small to mid-cap would be great targets for us. people that a lot of big companies have their own internal search. They may supplement it, they may not, but that'd be our niche, like mid-cap to small, mid-cap, maybe first set of leadership. I'd love for a young company, because you and I know all the Tech Village and ATDC and Tech Alpharetta's program there, to say, I need to hire my first head of marketing, or I need to hire my first CIO or VP of technology, or whatever it is. Or a lot of them now are CTOs because of the using more of the cloud, but we'd love to do those as well. But we can do others. My first search, I won't say the name of the company, but it was very successful. And they were challenged to find somebody in Charlotte for a head consultant role. And without exaggeration, I looked through over 500 different resumes. I got really good at reject based on what the profile was.
Sure.
But I found them what I think is a star, who starts in August. But I personally did I'm learning the nomenclature, but it's like a full deck, I think, of doing the recruiting and doing participating in the search, although I use sourcing people to help me. And that worked out real well. If people know me, know that we'll do a good job doing a search at any position. It's nothing really foreign to me, given my years of experience. Yeah, that's just open up opportunities. But I think the mid-cap and small are good areas for us.
That sounds great. Tino Mantella, folks, the president and managing partner of Retained, also chief strategy officer of Relevantz. Tino, this has been great.
Yeah, it's always great.
You always great to see you.
Good questions. Appreciate it.
Thank you. And thanks for the great work you do. But let's get to the most important question, which is, someone has heard this interview and wants to get in touch with you either on the Relevantz front or the Retained portion of your work, how can they do that?
My phone number is 678-984-8528. That's my mobile phone, so call me anytime. And then my 2 email addresses that are easiest are tino.mantella@retain.com and tino.mantella@relevantz.com with a Z. Yeah, reach out. And I don't mind competing, so if you're looking for somebody for a search, just reach out, give us a chance. On the Relevantz side, I'd love to introduce you to the team and help you solve any issue that you have.
That's terrific. Tino Mantella. Tino, thanks again for coming in.
Thanks, John. Appreciate it.
Absolutely. Hey, folks, just a quick thought for you. If you are not aware, and I'm not sure how many people aren't aware of Casa Nova Italian restaurant around here. Everyone knows, but maybe you haven't been there in a while and you've forgotten that they were farm to table before that was cool. They've had that garden behind their restaurant for years and years. And so if you want to taste those fresh tomatoes and corn and peppers and zucchini and herbs that they put in their cook-to-order dishes, hey, you need to go back and check them out. And they never forget you. They're just, if you've been once, you're a member of the family. Maria and her family, they're just fantastic, and they do great work. And I heard somebody recently that drives from Noonan regularly to go eat there. So does that tell you something? CasaNovaRestaurant.com is where you need to go to find out more and also learn about their catering. If you need a party catered, they do great work there. Hey, I've got a book out. It's called The Generosity Mindset for service providers that need some help with their value, their positioning, their business development, their pricing. This book is written for you. It's called it. And you can go get information at thegenerositymindset.com, including on where to buy the book, which is essentially everywhere. Also, I want to thank you, our listener. I appreciate you so much because we're coming up on show number 800 for North Fulton Business Radio, and we've only gotten this far because of your support. So thank you for sharing the show, for liking us on social media, for the emails and encouragement that you can constantly give us. We couldn't do it without you. And our work is important, and you support that work. Our work is important because we support business, and we're the voice of business in this market, and that's our mission. And business doesn't get the platform it ought to get in major media. We try to fill that platform, and thanks to you, we're able to do that. So thank you for your support. So for my guest, Tino Mantella. I'm John Ray. Join us next time here on North Fulton Business Radio.